Fighting games have some of the most varied rosters out of any genre. We have robots, demons, dinosaurs, cats, ninjas, you get the idea. It's like Rule 34, if it exists, it's in a fighting game. The only exception, surprisingly enough, is women. Specifically any women who are visibly old, let's say over 40 or maybe 50. We have just about every variety of granddad under the sun, yet grandmas are nowhere in sight. What gives? Before we begin, we know that this topic tends to be somewhat contentious. People see question of where are older women in fighting games and start making all sorts of assumptions about the motivations or ideologies behind that question. In this video, we're not going to talk about how fighting game grandmas feel left out when they have to main Chun-Li or Ivy. Instead, we want to address the usual concerns about adding older female characters, but also offer an argument that they can be interesting, bring something new to the table, and benefit fighting games in general. If you end up enjoying the video, please consider dropping a like or a comment. We always appreciate it. Cheers! Let's start by addressing the criticism or arguments that people usually raise when it comes to older female characters in fighting games. As far as I can tell, there are two major points that always get repeated. The most common one seems to be that there is simply no interest in them, because they are not attractive. Why would you add someone like that instead of another super hot character that will have people pumping out fan art and buying up all the costumes, merch, and figurines? I feel like much of this comes down to the fighting game demographics. Most players are young straight guys, so when a new character is a weird old man, nobody questions how attractive they are. For example, take a look at Oro. If you apply the same logic as people do to female characters, why would you ever add him to the game? Old people are too weak to be fighting, and nobody's gonna play dress up with this little ugly dude. And yet Capcom did add him, twice. And both times people still liked him and played him, even if he wasn't the most common pick. So why not do something similar with old women? I think this is where the second part comes in. People simply can't imagine how an old woman would fight. And, well, it's kind of an imagination skill issue. When they hear old woman, they just imagine something like this and then stop thinking about the countless other possibilities. But since when are fighting games bound by realism or replicating real life? This is a genre that is, in many ways, inspired by the Kung Fu and Wuxia movies, as well as some classic manga and anime. We never question the superhuman displays of strength from the ancient masters, and we don't ask for a scientific explanation behind Ken's flaming kicks. As long as it's cool, and the character is fun to play, that's all that matters. Within fighting games we have Power Instinct, with the infamous pair of old sisters who hate each other. They also appear in Groove on Fight, where they fought while tied to each other. Meanwhile, Elizabeth and Sandra are witches who use their power to shapeshift, effectively being two characters at once. On the more grounded front, we have Lady Butterfly, who relies on threads and needles for her offense. As long as you're creative, there are many ways to execute on the same premise. Now that we hopefully put some of the criticisms to rest, let's address what is by far the most important question. Why should you care? That's a valid question, but also a highly subjective one. If you only view characters as functions, you probably do not care what visuals are chosen to represent those functions. However, if you view characters as the complete package of story, visuals, and gameplay, you might appreciate new concepts that offer something fresh. And that's precisely the value of creating characters that nobody else is making, as long as you do it well. It would be easy to just make a 3D model of some grandma and make her fight like any other character, but that's boring. What makes unique characters interesting is when their story and gameplay do a good job of playing off of those unique elements. For older characters especially, it makes you think about ways of fighting that are less reliant on body strength. Though you can still do that if you sell it through their design or abilities. However, most of the time, old characters in any fiction are more reliant on things that we usually associate with older people, such as wisdom and experience, like the old master trope. They rely on not wasting movement, redirecting power, or knowing just when or how to strike. The room for ideas only expands when we venture into the fantasy. For example, in arena fighters, we have someone like Chio, who fights by controlling her puppets. A clever idea to offer a unique fighting style while also playing off of her own lack of physical abilities. Another interesting example that we can find in animation is Yubaba and her sister Zeniba from Spirited Away. Both of them had a suit of unique magical abilities, like sending out paper birds to attack someone or conjuring elaborate curses. Creating something new is never easy, but by taking on something difficult, by accepting this challenge, we usually get some of the most interesting and unique characters in the medium. So for that reason alone, it would be nice to see fighting games explore the niches that they usually avoid. As always, thank you to those who watch all the way to the end, and see you next time.